On this edition of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher.
I faced him 5 times and walked him 3 times, so that gives you an idea of kind of where. And he wasn't a good hitter, right? Like, we know he wasn't a good hitter. So that'll give you an idea where my heart rate might have been. I did punch him out twice, so I do have that under my belt. I had both Bobby Cox and Joe Torre as my manager because I started in Atlanta. I had John Smoltz and Mariano Rivera as my closers that year. It was just really cool to be around some greatness, to be able to pick brains and to experience it. It was August. I went 3 innings, gave up 6 runs, only 1 punch out. So I'm pretty sure it was Strawberry. But here's your order. It was Jeter, Boggs, Bernie Williams, Cecil Fielder, Fortino Martinez, Darryl Strawberry, Mariano Duncan, Jim Leyritz, and then Gerald Williams, who I also played with later. The bus that we drove in Chattanooga was that bus. It was not comfortable. And then you look over, and here come the Birmingham Barons, and they got a sleeper bus that Michael Jordan got for them. And as cool as it was to play with him, I'm sure that was probably the greatest benefit.
The greatest sports moments happen in seconds, but the stories behind them are timeless. Dive into the mind of the icons who lived those moments. No filters, just authentic conversations about the moments that define careers. I'm Justin Kutcher, and this is the Just in Time podcast.
Welcome to another edition of the Just in Time podcast with Justin Kutcher. I'm joined now by a guy who pitched in the big leagues for 10 years. He was a first-round pick of the Cincinnati Reds all the way back in 1994. He's done so much. He's the current TV analyst for the Atlanta Braves. He was also one of my broadcast partners on MLB on Fox. CJ Nitkowski. CJ, man, it's been too long. I'm so happy that you're here and so happy to be doing this with you.
Kutch, I'm happy to be with you. I appreciate you saying all the way back in 1994. Not that I needed any help. Glad I colored my grays before we did this. And not just any partner. You were the first guy I ever did a big league game with on television, man. Which is always a great memory for me in St. Louis.
In St. Louis, I will never, ever forget that because, and we can get into this story. I thought we might get into it later, but let's just start things off right now. Your wife came with you on that trip.
No.
We walk into the booth, and she, I believe, says, "Wow, it's so weird coming to the ballpark and not knowing if I'm going to leave crying."
Well, yeah.
I was just like, wait, what?
Yeah, got to give an insight to what the 26 years of our marriage have been like, and how tough it was for her being a baseball wife. But there's a lot of truth to that. Remember, it all came together last second, right? So that was FS1. They thought that they were going to be able to elevate the local broadcast, and then realized that they couldn't. I got asked like maybe a few days before, if I could do that game. And I was like, yeah. I said the only thing was my wife was going to come. We live in Atlanta. She was going to come visit in LA where we were doing studio. Mm-hmm. Would you guys at least be willing to fly her there so we can meet her there? They were good about it, and they did. And so it's the first big league game. We're all excited, and she loves baseball. She played softball in college and loves the sport. And so it was just fun for her to be there. But her perspective was genuine, which was I'm at a ballpark, a big league ballpark where my husband is working, and there's no chance that I'm leaving here crying, because that was her experience. Her experience was a lot of times going to games and leaving there crying because I walked a bunch of guys, I hit some guy, whatever it was, like just a mess of a game that she had to live. I've been with her since college, so she lived out my entire career with me and knew a lot of the pain that came along with it. And it was like, oh, this is nice. You're not getting traded or released or giving up homers today. This is kind of nice. Now I can enjoy a big league game where you're working.
It's funny because I think it brings up a perspective that many people never think about, right? Like when you're the player, it's your job. When you're the spouse, you're living and dying with everything that person does. Yeah. And so for her to go to the ballpark and be worried about, oh my God, how's CJ going to do today? What's going to happen? Is he going to come back? And is he going to be released? Is he going to be sent down? There's a lot that people don't realize goes into this.
You're right. And I think, when I do my radio show, we have more time to kind of talk to guys. We try to bring that up once in a while when we can and kind of dig into the support and how important it is. I would never be able to do this at least as long as I did. And there's a lot of similarities to what we do in broadcasting. It's the same kind of thing where there's time away, where you're relying on somebody else to kind of keep the fort down. For us having 3 kids, which, I wouldn't have made it. I would not have been able to stay sane as long as I did without having that support group. And then you kind of forget it a little bit. Like you're so locked in, like you said, to doing your job, all the preparation that goes into it, that it's very easy to overlook the fact that there is somebody that's living and dying with how your performances are going, because they know how much it's going to affect their life. Right. And when I laid eyes on my wife at St. John's and just thought, man, that girl's hot. I'd love to get to know her. Now she turns into my wife. Little did she know that she was going to come along on a journey for the 19 years of playing that were going to take us to Korea and Japan and the Dominican and the ups and downs and the trades and all of the things that had happened along the way. And again, you're so locked into doing what you're trying to do to have hopefully a good career that you forget sometimes that they're just riding the wave. I will say that I kind of picked up on it a little bit more as a parent and watching my oldest son then pitch in high school, watching my younger one do it now, and all the feelings that come along with that and the nervousness that comes along with it. Obviously, it's not their life and their career at that moment, but there are still some of those similar feelings. So you become a little bit more empathetic and you start to understand it a little bit more as you get older.
Everybody I talk to who has kids, who play sports, I mean, I can remember being in the booth with Eric Karros, and he's watching like updates on his son, and he's nervous. And now his son just made his major league debut, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, I can't believe this is happening. But for me, I'm looking at your career. You played for 8 teams. You got traded a bunch of times. How do you, when you have a family, kind of compartmentalize and realize, okay, I got to uproot. Do I uproot the family? Do I not uproot the family? All the thoughts that go in, because as a fan, you know, we just think, oh, well, all right, yeah, we got CJ Nitkowski. He better be here for tomorrow's game.
That's right. That's right. And that's kind of how it went. I think, you know, luckily in a way, as much as I didn't like all the moving around, it definitely prepared me for broadcasting. I got much more different perspectives on the game. That was helpful. I also think my first full year in baseball kind of set me up for what the rest of it was going to be like. So drafted in 94, as you mentioned, my first full years in 95. I went AA with the Reds, AAA with the Reds to the big leagues, back down to AAA, and then traded. So I played in 4 cities my first full year as their first round pick, as opposed to a lot of guys that are maybe going to be in high A ball if they're going well. If you're a college guy, maybe you get a taste of AA at the end and kind of taking those next steps. And I know we move guys along a little bit quicker than we used to, but that is a lot. I mean, that was 4 different cities. I paid August 1995 rent in 3 different cities.
Did you really?
Yeah, in Cincinnati, Detroit, and Indianapolis. And so even though we were only dating at the time, I do think it kind of prepared certainly me, but also my soon-to-be wife, that this is kind of what the life is like. And it's not that chaotic as it was that year, first full year, but there was a lot that went on. And then every decision we had to make once we started having a family, when it was, are you going to come out? I have an out in my contract. Let's just say I'm in the minor leagues and I might only be here a month. If it doesn't work out, I want to move on to another thing. So maybe they wouldn't come to that city in that moment. Having a home base that we did in Houston for about 9 years was really helpful. It gave the kids some stability. So that was super helpful. The longest stretch we had was 2.5 months that I was in Korea by myself because they had to go back for school. That was a little bit difficult. It was tough. And internet stuff was there, but we didn't have FaceTime the way that we did. We don't have Zoom the way that we do now. So there were some challenges that came along with that. But then it goes back to having somebody steady to lead the way. And really, quite honestly, is just thinking about the kids. That's the thing you worry about. Like, I'll go chase my stuff. I'll deal with what I got to deal with. But can we make sure that the kids are on a solid foundation? And I joke about this all the time. I actually mentioned this yesterday to somebody. I say, I don't know if I should be concerned about it or just happy that it went this way. But not a single time when I left did my children cry. Not once. Not one time. It wasn't like, oh no, dad's leaving again. Like you hear these stories and you see these families and the kids are like, man, it was really hard to leave today. They were pulled on. They were trying to take my suitcase, whatever it may be. And they're full of tears. And I'm like, yeah, not a single tear, not one. So I'm like, either I'm a terrible dad and they don't like me, or I'd like to think that my wife's doing a good job and they know she's going to be there and they grew up with the lifestyle so they understand it. And they've been able to ride the wave too.
Let's go all the way back to high school. You grew up in New York, right outside New Jersey. You went to high school in New Jersey. You were that late bloomer. And I know you went to St. John's, but you didn't start at St. John's. So what was the process like for you? When did you think like you could be a pretty good baseball player?
So I tell people all the time that I think it's really important to be ignorant and just believe, right? As silly as that sounds, there's got to be something behind it. But, you know, like everybody else, I grew up as a kid believing that I was going to be in the big leagues. So you just believed it, right? And then at some point, reality sets in for most, but it kind of had never stopped. So I was okay in high school. We won a state championship and it got a little attention, but I wasn't a hard thrower. I didn't have a big arm. And so I didn't have a lot of opportunity. I had 2 options coming out of Don Bosco Prep, where I went to school in New Jersey. It was George Mason, which ironically enough, Dayton Moore was a coach there at the time.
No way.
Who I didn't realize it then, but then went on, of course, to be in the front office with the Braves and with the Royals and win there. And of course, now also with the Texas Rangers. And I consider him a good friend and fun talking with him. But he happened to be there. And then my other option was Florida Atlantic. Down here, I'm in Miami now, but in Boca. And that was a Division II school at the time. And they've gone on to have some pretty good success. And Nolan Shonowell and some other big leaguers have come out of there since then, but it wasn't nearly the program. But I was just excited about the idea, and it seemed to make some sense. And so I went to FAU and got a chance to pitch. And I think the landscape of what we see now with these college baseball players, it's a lot tougher to find a spot. And when I reflect on what happened to me then as a 1991 high school graduate, was I got a place to pitch. Didn't go that great, but I got to pitch the whole year. I was 1-8 my freshman year at Florida Atlantic. I had an ERA in the 4s. I had more walks than strikeouts. That is not a guy that's on the path who's throwing 83 miles an hour on the path to the big leagues. But I never thought that. I was like, we're just going to keep going. We're going to keep going, and we're going to keep going. I got a little homesick. I had a chance to transfer, went to St. John's, and I got around some really competitive guys that brought a little bit more out of me, some really competitive roommates that I lived with, and we really pushed each other. And all of a sudden, that first spring at St. John's was the first time I saw 90 miles an hour. And then those next couple of years, just things started taking off. And then right before the draft, I was touching 94. And this is, and ask any old guy about the old guy compared to where we are now. So maybe a little bit harder by today's standards, and end up being a high first-round draft pick. But at the time, I mean, just it's crazy to think. I was telling Paul Bird, we were talking about this a few months ago, and I didn't even think about the fact that I had more walks than strikeouts. Like, again, that's not a recipe for success, but somehow it didn't even cross my mind. And how do you come out of a Division II school with a 1-8 record, with more walks than strikeouts, and then end up at a decent Division I school, right? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I think for me, I kept going, kept believing, and I was very fortunate to end up at St. John's, and it helped propel my career. And I met my wife there and everything else. It changed my life.
Wait, but why did St. John's even want you if you're 1-8?
That's a great question. So this is a fun story for me. It's true. It's that same thing. Like, again, I didn't think that way, but what you're saying is objectively a really good question. It never came up in my mind. So I actually was looking at Providence, and Providence doesn't even have baseball anymore. And Lou Merloni was there at the time, and they were on me a little bit, knew I was transferring, and that probably made a little bit more sense kind of based on where their program was. So I went to watch them play in the Big East tournament, which was up in Connecticut. And I ran into an old high school teammate of mine who was a senior at St. John's. And I just happened to literally bump into him. And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, I said, things didn't work out at FAU. I'm looking to transfer, and I'm coming to watch Providence play. And it's a place that I might end up going. He's like, "Hold on a minute, man." And so he goes and he talks to the pitching coach at St. John's. And he only knew me from high school and knew that I had some success there. Didn't know anything about how things went. The information was not flying around like it is now. Like, you're not going to go look up my stats of my freshman year. And so he had a conversation with him. They came and watched me pitch in the summer and made me an offer. And because I bumped into an old high school catcher, St. John's wasn't on me. He just said, "Hey, you need to go take a look at this guy. He was good in high school. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's a lefty." And thanks to that off chance meeting running into Anthony Criscuolo, I ended up at St. John's.
It just makes me think how things happen for reasons.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, how else do you explain that situation where then you go to St. John's, you see some girl that you think is pretty hot, you want to talk to her, you end up marrying her, and the rest of your life is all set because of that one move.
Yeah. And I didn't want to go to my high school. I mean, I think we can all do this in our lives, right? So we can go back and we look at certain moments that very easily could have gone another way that, like you said, then lead to everything else that happens the rest of your life. But you mentioned I grew up in New York. It was only 3 miles away to this all-boys Catholic high school. And I went to Catholic grade school. I was over wearing a tie to school every day. I did it from 1st to 8th grade. Like, I don't want to wear a tie anymore, and I didn't want to go to school without girls. But my parents were pretty insistent on me going there. Education was important to my parents, and so I remember we had to take these tests to see if we could get into these private high schools. Again, it's nothing like it is today. And we thought we could be slick and get a few questions wrong and kind of botch the test so I could just go to my local public high school, which I wanted to do with my friends. That didn't work. And so I went there. Now it ended up being a really good decision for me and for baseball and for just everything else that came along with going to Don Bosco, which has now turned into this mini college in northern New Jersey. But at the time, I didn't want to do it. And so again, if I end up not going there, I don't know who Anthony Criscuolo is. And I don't bump into Anthony Criscuolo at the Big East tournament, who then says, hey, I'm going to go talk to my pitching coach about you maybe coming to St. John's. So it's fun to do that and look back right as we get older. But we all have those moments of people that we run into or things that happen that you're like, man, that really changed everything that happened in my life.
Talk to me about draft day, 1994. Did you think you were a first-round pick?
So a lot of guys nowadays know pretty far ahead of time, right? So again, because I was a late bloomer when I started my junior year, I was so excited because I popped up in Baseball America's top 100 prospects. I was the last guy on the list. Yes. So I was on the pitching side. So it was actually, I was number 99, number 100 was a position player. And they were like, hey, you're probably going to be like a 10th round pick. This is before the season started. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I was so thrilled. And then as the season went on, guys were dropping down, guys were getting hurt. My velocity kind of kept creeping up. And then it wasn't until 2 weeks before the draft that my coach over at St. John's is like, hey, some of these scouts are telling me you might actually go pretty high in the first round. I was like, what? Like, it was like 10th round, here in March, you get to April, hey, maybe 7th round. I'm like, holy crap. Like, it sounded like the biggest deal. So I didn't have a lot of time to really think about it like other guys do kind of going in. And then you just sit around and you wait for the phone to ring. Again, no television for the draft. Everything was different. Waiting, and phone rings. And actually, this is kind of crazy to think. Bob Gephardt, who was the general manager of the Rockies at the time, actually came and watched me pitch in a summer league game. Because I was such a late bloomer, there were some teams that didn't send their biggest executives to see me. Because when the season started, I was not a first-round pick, so guys were not coming. There were scouts there, but it was that next level of like national cross-checker and even some general managers that if they have that high of a pick, want to see a potential arm in person. And so Bob Gephardt came all the way from Colorado to watch me pitch in a men's league game from New Jersey. I just did it for him. Like I just jumped on this team to throw one game so that he could see it. And he was such a nice guy, and I really liked him. And as crazy as it sounds, I'm like, oh, I'd love to go to Colorado. I might be the only pitcher sitting in the draft board. I hope the Rockies pick me. But I just liked him. Like the relationship was good. I was like, I trust this guy. And so I'm waiting. They had the 7th pick, waiting, phone rings, and it's not Bob Gephardt. It's Jim Bowden, who was the general manager of the Cincinnati Reds, who I've since worked with at MLB Network Radio. And I'm talking to my family. I got this cordless phone with the long antenna on, and I'm going like this, and I'm going like this. It's 9. It ended up being 9. And Jim was really excited, and it was a fun conversation. And I have this ridiculous picture that I accidentally shared with our television producer here, which she cannot be trusted because she ended up putting it on the air the other day. But I'm wearing these really tight jean shorts. I got a St. John's t-shirt that's tucked in with like the brown braided belt.
Yes.
With this big cordless phone. The jean shorts looked a little tight. And I was just taking the phone call. So it was a fun day, man. I mean, it's so long ago, but a really fun day, good memory. And like I said, man, it just goes back to always believing, always working, always expecting good things to happen, even though they always didn't happen. But that day was an important one.
What are the conversations with Jim like, now? Do you ever go back and think about those days and talk about that day together?
We haven't as much. When I was doing
like, and then, dude, you traded me like the next year.
I was traded the deadline the very next year. So he was a very aggressive general manager. Again, it's changed now. We see it more and more. But a lot of the guys that you see, especially pitchers that get moved along quickly, are coming out of the big conferences, right? It's an SEC, maybe an ACC guy that gets moved along pretty quickly. I was coming out of the Big East, but he put me right in AA out of college, which, again, you see it a little bit more now, but it wasn't common then, which worked out awesome because Michael Jordan was in that league that year. So I got to face him, which was pretty cool. And then he called me up a year to the day that I had signed. I drafted on June 2nd, signed June 3rd, and I was in the big leagues June 3rd the next year, and then traded that deadline. So it was quick, right? I didn't have that time of like, you're going to be this Cincinnati Reds guy and come through the system and then hopefully eventually get there. All went really fast. But the phone call was cool because, he introduced himself and then he said, hey, everybody in our war room cheering, really excited when we made that decision to take you with the 9th overall pick. So it was cool. It was a good memory. We joke about it. Steve Phillips, who I did radio with for years, on the morning show was like, hey, he goes, the Reds, they really drafted a heck of a broadcaster. But I always joke around and say, if you're going to trick them one day, do it on draft day.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice move. Okay, so wait, you get drafted, you go to AA, and then Michael Jordan is playing in Birmingham, and you got to face him?
I did. It was, to me, I tell people all the time, of the 19 years I played, there was 2 times that I was standing on the pitching rubber, kind of like, holy crap, look who's standing at the plate. It was Michael Jordan that year. And then for me, Frank Thomas was the other one. just because he was such a massive human being. Like, it just stuck out. I faced a lot of great future Hall of Famers, all that kind of stuff. But there was something about those two, ironically enough, that stuck out. But the Jordan stuff was insane. I mean, I'm coming right out of college, right? So I still have a ton of friends in college. And here, all of a sudden, they find out that I'm going to be in the league where Michael Jordan is. So I got 2 starts against him. I have a pretty cool old grainy video that my dad took from the side. So it's kind of like behind first base. You can see both me and him and throwing a breaking ball, and he swings and misses and strikes out. But it was fun, man. I had buddies come down to Birmingham that drove, I think, about 14 hours from where I grew up just to see me pitch against him. And that's when Scottie Pippen's book had come out, where he was kind of talking a little trash at the time, if you remember. And so these are my friends having a good time, drinking a little bit. It's kind of quiet. My one buddy stands up and says something dumb about what Scottie Pippen said about him in Birmingham. But Jordan ends up, not against me, but ends up hitting one of his 3 home runs that night.
No way.
So they actually got to witness it. I didn't have a great game. I think I walked him a couple of times. But it was a cool moment. And the other thing that goes into that too is that I've learned this from my friends that tell me this stuff afterwards, is that, again, just like your wife, right? You're just going along, you're trying to do your thing. She's along for the ride. A lot of them will talk about experiences that they got to have because of it, right? The fact that they got in a car, 3 of them drove down to watch me pitch against Michael Jordan. Afterwards, MJ was pretty good about autograph stuff. I have one Southern League Baseball with his autograph on it. I tried to get them 3, which is pretty greedy to ask a lot, but I did get 1. And so I had 1 for them, and they had to figure out who was going to get it. So they kind of fought over it. They rock, paper, scissored it. My one buddy to this day who won, he wanted it was his. He said one of the other guys was so annoying over the 14-hour ride home about it that he just gave it to him.
No.
He couldn't take it anymore. And I was like, you will regret that for the rest of your life, which he certainly has. But that kind of stuff is really fun. And then was really cool for me. So last year, that ballpark is no longer the AA home of the Birmingham Barons, right? But it's Hoover Met Park. My son got to pitch on that mound last year. So it was really cool. So I hadn't been there since, that time. And so that there's all the big, huge amateur tournaments that they have now. Went back and it worked out where they're playing on a bunch of different fields in Birmingham, but that was going to be one of them, the Met there in Hoover, which is just outside of Birmingham. And he got to throw. So it was cool to take some video of him pitching on that mound, knowing that. So it was, 30 years earlier that I was also pitching on that mound, but facing Michael Jordan.
The difference now was that the video wasn't as grainy.
Sharp video, just pinch in, pinch out. If you want to get a little tighter, we could tell you the velocity, all that kind of stuff. But and I had to go too, so I had a game that night. So I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I got to work a game in Atlanta. It's a couple hours away. So this was an early, like 8 o'clock game. So I'm like hoping he's going to get in early. And thankfully, it was like I literally took the video, watched a little bit of it, had my little moment of nostalgia, kissed my wife, and got in the car and had to drive to Atlanta to go do a game.
Tell me what it was like, though, to be on the mound. Because when you go to St. John's, during that time you're at St. John's, the Knicks and the Bulls rivalry is at its height. And Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. I know you're a sports fan.
Yeah.
So how do you, when you're on the mound and you're looking and you see it's Michael Jordan, kind of just settle your heart rate down, settle your brain down, and throw a pitch?
Well, I faced him 5 times and walked him 3 times, so that gives you an idea of kind of well. And he wasn't a good hitter, right? We know he wasn't a good hitter. So that'll give you an idea where my heart rate might have been. I did punch him out twice, so I do have that under my belt. It's a good question, man. It's one of those ones, especially again because you're so early in your career. At that point, time go on, you start to get around big leaguers, right? Even some guys I was blown away when I started playing with guys that even had major league time. As I was kind of working my way up, like, this guy's been in the big leagues. That's amazing. So now take one of the greatest athletes we've ever seen. And even though I grew up in New York and wanted to see the Knicks win, I've always admired Michael Jordan. I like everything about that guy. The Last Dance, I could watch it over and over and over again. Just, when you get to learn more about, who he is as a person and what makes him so competitive, even if he was a pain in the ass to some teammates along the way, I really respect it, right? It's just, he's unbelievably special. So I may even have a better perspective after than during it, but it felt like a big deal. It was a holy crap moment because this is one of the greatest athletes, and take all your sports if you want and put them together, that we have ever seen. And just the whole timing of it and the way that worked out that I actually got to face him was great. We're the only 2 guys that started our professional careers at that level that year, right? Everybody else is going A-ball and rookie ball and everything else, and I'm sure Michael Jordan tells people that story all the time about me and him.
It's funny, when I ran into him, he mentioned that.
He's like, it was me and CJ. We were the only 2. But it's cool, man. When I look back, I'm grateful to have played as long as I had. Of course, I wish I had much more success and all the other good things that come along with being a big leaguer. But the experiences like that, and there's a lot of them along the way, that I've come to appreciate a ton. It's fun to storytell. It's fun to pass it on to the kids or just to have experienced it. This game is great in that regard for me. All the different things that it can bring you, and who thought of all the things I had on my bingo card of what I wanted to accomplish, facing one of the greatest basketball players to ever do it was not even a thought.
You know what's funny is that people rag on MJ for playing baseball, and they're like, "This guy, he was terrible, terrible." I'm like, he still hit 2-something.
Yeah.
In Double-A, having not played baseball in probably close to 15 years. Like, that's a ridiculous accomplishment.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He had 50 stolen bases, I think.
He had a lot of stolen bases. I mean,
he might have had 50 RBIs.
Like, that's not easy.
No.
And Terry Francona was his manager.
That's right. And Tito was his manager. I eventually had Tito as a bench coach a couple years later, and he's on our radio show all the time, and he's one of the greatest to ever do it. Incredible human being. Right guy for that moment, for sure, to have MJ the way that it worked out. I admire it too. Did he put up great numbers? No, but he went out there and did it. Like, he didn't embarrass himself. That is special. Was he about 30 at the time? Do you remember?
Yes. Yes, he was about 30.
It was amazing what he did. I respect it. So the people that from the outside want to give him a hard time, want to give Tim Tebow a hard time when he took a shot at it, man, like, go for it, right? I mean, if that's on your heart, and obviously it's there's an emotional story there for him and his father, and what really tied him into baseball and his father's love for the game at the time, everything he was going through. Anybody that's got time to criticize that, I really don't have time for, because that's special, and what he did was special.
Yeah, I just think about it, just going back and trying to catch somebody who's throwing 94, 95, having not caught in 15 years. Now you're trying to hit 94, 95. Yeah. And oh, by the way, he would play 36 holes before he would go to the ballpark.
That's right. And got those guys an amazing bus. That was the biggest envy of everybody else in the Southern League. Like, we are on the old crappy buses from Bull Durham. Like, those were real. The bus that we drove in Chattanooga was that bus. It was not comfortable. And then you look over, and here come the Birmingham Barons, and they got a sleeper bus that Michael Jordan got for them. And as cool as it was to play with him, I'm sure that was probably the greatest benefit.
Yeah, no doubt. And maybe just having MJ's number in your phone going forward, hey, can you get me tickets for this? Or you want to go play golf sometime? When you think about 94 being drafted, the strike happens. How is it going to impact you? Like, you've got this elation of being drafted first round, and now the baseball world comes to a stop. So how does that impact you?
Yeah, it was brutal. You learn very quickly about the business side of the game. And I was interested in, some guys, and I don't have a problem with it, but some guys don't pay as close attention to some of the labor issues. They just want to go out and play the game. But I was pretty fascinated by all of it. Tim Fortuna, who former lefty, who's now a scout, did it for a long time, actually got sent down right before the strike to Double-A. So he was kind of like the first kind of big league guy that I was around a little bit, and he was very helpful. We had a couple of guys on the 40-man roster who were also in Double-A at the time that were up to date on everything that was going on. So it was all very shocking. You're learning about it early on, which I think it's smart for players to try to educate yourself, or at least listen to the older guys that have gone before you, and what's at stake and what matters the most. And a lot of the arguments haven't changed in those past 30 plus years. And as jarring as it was not to have a World Series that year, your first year in professional baseball, was probably more so was then the next year, the strike still wasn't settled. And so there was no big league spring training. And so here I am, their first round pick. You feel like you're going to go to spring training, you're going to get a feel, you're going to meet some guys, you're going to get sent out, but at least you're going to go kind of get that taste. And it didn't exist. It wasn't available. And so that part was probably as frustrating as the strike that happened, the part of it in 94, not having a World Series, but to kick off your career in that very first year, there is no major league spring training. There is no getting in front of Davey Johnson or Don Gullett and getting to know the big league coaches a little bit before you go to the minor leagues and be around big league pitchers, and those other guys. So the first time I ever got to meet any of those people or spend time with them was actually when I got called up. So the strike had a really big effect. And then the Braves, or excuse me, not the Braves, but the Reds at the time were one of two teams that did not hire replacement players. If you remember the whole replacement player thing, bringing in former guys and retired guys and all this kind of stuff to fill out rosters for spring training. Well, the Reds did not do that. This was my introduction into professional baseball. My first spring, Jim Bowden brings was about 110 minor leaguers in minor league camp. brings everybody in and says, you are all being asked to cross the picket line right now. And if you're not going to cross it today, you can leave camp. And you imagine your first year in spring training, like you feel like you're a puppy, you have no idea what's going on. And your general manager is asking you now as the first round pick to cross the picket line.
Wow.
And you're hearing all these sides of it because you're not a member of the union at that point. And I was like, well, there's no way I would do that. And it was probably, I think 7 guys stayed back. And it felt like the last day of school. 100+ players just got in the parking lot and left. I mean, that's heavy. That's a lot for guys to go through. And so I stayed in Florida for like a week or so because of that part of the strike. And eventually we were called back and things got settled. But that was probably the biggest eye-opener as far as how the business side of this game works, that it doesn't matter who you are in a situation like that the team that I was with was going to ask me to cross the picket line, even though I was just their first-round pick and just a few months into my career.
That is crazy. Now, I have to ask this. If I'm not mistaken, you grew up a New York Yankees fan, right?
I did, yes.
Okay. So the strike happens in 94. The Yankees are having their best season. It looks like it's going to be a Yankees Expos World Series.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
You just got drafted. You're now a professional baseball player. Were you more upset that the World Series got canceled because there's a strike and you don't know what's going to happen with your career? Or are you more upset because you could have seen the Yankees in the World Series?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. That's a tough one because you're so locked into kind of what's going on with yourself at the time. I didn't lose my Yankee fandom yet. That came the next year when I rolled into Yankee Stadium and got it handed to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, never mind. Not your fan anymore. But that's a good question. I don't remember if I had a bad feeling about it. There was so much going on that year, right, for me in general, and just trying to understand it all. I don't know. I mean, I guess for Yankee fans, I think for Expo fans, they probably have the bigger regret in what that team would have been because they don't have a team anymore. Or at least in the sense of the Yankees, it wasn't much longer after that all of a sudden they went on this unbelievable run. And so while they might have missed out on 94 and what could have been something pretty special, they still got theirs, where the Expos did not. So I think those Montreal fans probably have a little bit more. But I don't remember necessarily being upset about the fact that I felt the Yankees were World Series contenders. That bothered me as much as I was still trying to grasp, what the heck was going on and what turned out to be a whirlwind of a year.
So I'll tell you a funny story because you were also the broadcaster for the Texas Rangers. Do you remember Willie Upshaw?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So Willie Upshaw lived in my hometown, Fairfield, Connecticut, which, by the way, just played in the Little League World Series.
Oh, nice.
Very proud of them. But his son, Brock, and I were teammates. And I had tickets, I think it was August 18th, to go to the Yankees and Rangers in New York. And Willie said he was going to get me on the field.
Oh, my.
The strike happened. Never happened. I never got on the field, but I still have those tickets. And so for me, I still have the tickets. I was just crushed. Yeah. And then I finally got on the field at Yankee Stadium many, many years later. Yeah. And it was amazing. So for you, I was going to ask you about your major league debut, but I want to go beyond that. When you got to Yankee Stadium and you're now pitching in Yankee Stadium, before you get on the mound, when you just go and warm up on the field, you're not on the Yankees, but you're playing on those hallowed grounds.
Yeah.
Did you sense it? Was it different? Like, what are you taking in?
For me, it was the greatest thing ever. The first time I went through, I was a starter. I did make a start the first time in 95. So I got to make the visit and just experience being on the field. I was on it one other time when I was at St. John's. We did a camp there. So I got to help out. And actually, when I was in high school, you would love this. I was on the field 2 times. In high school, I don't know how, but one of the dads had a connection. The Yankees were replacing their sod in the offseason, and we were allowed to come take all the sod in foul territory, rolled it up, and then put it on our high school field.
What?
Yeah, which was pretty cool. So that was the first time I got to step on the field, but we're there to work and had to get out of there. And then I did a camp when I was at St. John's, which was a ton of fun. But I always loved being in the outfield and shagging, right? Because I was a pitcher, but I, like all of us, we think we can be position players, even though I didn't have the ability. So I loved being in the outfield and running down fly balls and having a good time out there, especially early. So the first time I got to do that in Yankee Stadium was pretty awesome because your perspective now completely changes, right? You're in the stands. I went to a lot of games as a kid. More often than not, we might have been down the left field line or upper deck and had quite a few opening days over the years, and you're looking down. Mm-hmm. Now you're standing on the field and you're looking up. right? And so that view is just amazing. And just there's something about the grass that's special. Just like when you go as a fan, right? I was thinking about old Yankee Stadium now, and the greatest memories I have as a kid, whereas you were walking in the hallway and you could just catch a glimpse, right? After every vestibule there, you could catch a glimpse of the field. You're like, what section are we going to? How far before we get to our seats? But because it wasn't like now where everything's open, right? So you just get a little glimpse as you're going along, and it's the greenest grass you've ever seen in your life. It was unbelievable. And the familiar smell, the mustard and the beer that existed at old Yankee Stadium, like I can still smell those things and feel those things. So then to be able to actually, I am allowed to go downstairs. I'm not going to get yelled at if I tried to sneak around a security guard. This is where I now belong, to go into that clubhouse, to then go on the field. And like I said, have just even a play catch to warm up. It's probably better off that I got to go through one time where I wasn't making a start, just to experience it, because it was amazing. And then the next year I got to make my first start there in 96, but it was awesome. And then later play there in 2004, for a couple of months as a member of the Yankees was also really cool. I was a lot older, but it was still a cool moment for me, even though I would not have considered myself a Yankee fan anymore. There was still something about eventually putting the uniform on that was cool.
96, when you made that start against the team, how many friends and family did you have in the stands?
Yeah, so back then, the way the passes worked is that you had to write them down. Now everything's electronic. So you would get 4 family and 2 friend tickets. And so whenever you went someplace where you felt like you needed more, you go ask a buddy, hey, using your tickets tonight in New York? No, you can have them, or you can have 2 of them, or you can have 4 of them. And then what I have to do is you'd go right on the pass list. For me, let's just say I got my 6, and then John Flaherty is not using 4 of his, so I'd write his name and say 4, then leave for it. I left nearly 70 tickets for that first time through. And you didn't get charged tax like you do now either. They're a little tougher on the guys. But I left 70. I know a lot more people came on their own. Like I eventually reached my limit. It was just tough to try to keep up with it all. So it was fun. I think it was a cool moment for my parents, for sure, for my dad, knowing that we had gone to games over the years. Didn't go great, but I got to pitch against Jimmy Key, which was really cool, right? I mean, it's a big name. He pitched pretty good. Yes. I did not, but it was a moment, man. I mean, there's no getting around it, right? Again, we all dream the dream, no matter where you grew up, a fan of whatever sport it is that you grew up loving. There was something about that dream that eventually you're told no at some point in your life, whether you're 10 or whether you're 40. At some point, it's got to come to an end for all of us. But to have lived it, to step on that field, that dream that I was dreaming, sitting in my backyard for all those years was pretty awesome.
Couple things. You and I had the same thing in common when you talked about going to the games at the old Yankee Stadium and when you first saw the glimpse of the grass. And I can just remember going to games, being in the upper deck and figuring out the section and just walking 15 feet ahead of my parents. Like, oh my God, and you see the grass and you go like, that was so cool to me. And then I think about you starting against Jimmy Key in 1996. 1996, the Yankees go on to win the World Series. And the lineup, you're facing a rookie shortstop named Derek Jeter. What'd you do against him?
Oh, gosh, I couldn't even tell you then. I think the only guy I struck out in that game was Strawberry. I remember, I remember
lefty.
That's the only, and I think it was that game, to be honest. It's getting worse and worse, unfortunately, as we get older. But for me, it was, you have your first big league appearance, which always feels a little overwhelming. Guys talk about, how their legs feel and all that kind of stuff, and you can't feel them. There was a lot of that, I think, in that moment for me, just because it was so long ago. It wasn't a great game, but Jeter was a good player, but he wasn't Jeter yet, right? We kind of knew who he was coming in, but it was still more for me the older guys was the bigger deal. Like the Strawberry one is a big deal, right?
That's
for me as a kid who grew up there, and obviously who he was as a New York Met was kind of wild. Like that, those are the moments you're like, holy crap, like I'm really here. And at that point, I was a couple years into my career, but you still have those, and there were still enough guys around, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, I probably couldn't even tell you the lineup, to be honest with you. At the time, that's how long ago.
Yeah, my guess is Tim Raines was probably in the lineup. Bernie, Tino, Joe Girardi was probably catching. Second base, you probably had Mariano Duncan. Third base was Charlie Hayes, I think, or Wade Boggs. It was Wade Boggs.
Was Boggs there? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Charlie caught the last out, and then he caught the last out in 96.
Charlie caught the last out, but I think they got him in a trade acquisition. And Wade Boggs was the third baseman, and Boggs was the one who went around the outfield on the horse when they celebrated.
That's right. Oh, that was 96.
That was 96. So that was actually the best day of my life. I got to go to that game.
That was a good one. I
And
gotta see. You got me curious now. So it was August. I went 3 innings, gave up 6 runs, only 1 punch out. So I'm pretty sure it was Strawberry. But here's your order. It was Jeter, Boggs, Bernie Williams, Cecil Fielder, former teammate at that point, Tino Martinez, Darryl Strawberry, Mariano Duncan, Jim Leyritz, and then Gerald Williams, who I also played with later in my career.
so Leyritz was the catcher. They were giving Girardi the day off.
So yeah, some good names there.
That is some good names. Man, I love going back and thinking about that and seeing what the lineup is and who you get to face. You mentioned Frank Thomas before. I've always loved asking the question, what was your welcome to the big leagues moment?
Ooh.
Like when you realized, oh my God,
Yeah.
this thing that I said I was going to do, I'm here.
Yeah, probably the first win I got with the Reds. So I threw an inning of relief. Davey Johnson had me throw an inning of relief first just to get my feet wet, and then made my first start a couple days later. Threw 6 shutout innings against the Pirates, but I think I was still kind of just in my mind like you're just going, you're just doing what you're supposed to be doing, and then had a couple of decent starts, didn't pick up a win, and then I believe it was my 4th start was against the Phillies. It was on ESPN. And I ended up throwing 7 shutout innings. They had the best record in baseball at the time, and Curt Schilling was on the other side, and we won 1-0. And the only way we scored, I think Schilling threw a pickoff attempt away, so it was like 1 unearned run. But that was it for me because it was close enough in Philly where people were driving to come watch the game. I still hadn't picked up a win, but things were actually going pretty well. That moment for me was pretty cool. Going back and then watching some of it and seeing Chris Berman and Buck Martinez call the game, talk about you like you're a big leaguer, like you watch them talk about every other big leaguer along the way. After the game, I remember walking through like the tunnel, and Berman was down there, and he said hi to me and called me by name. And I was like, how does this dude know my name? You know, he just called the entire game, so of course he knows your name. But in my mind, I'm like, Chris Berman just said, hey, CJ, like as I walk by, right? And that's, you talk about like the heyday of Sports Center and those, those big names. And obviously they went on to an unbelievable run. But to me, that was kind of a big deal. As weird as that sounds, even to hear Chris Berman say hello to me. But that game in particular, just because it was a fun one, it was a good team. Darren Dalton was on that team, and just big names on that Philadelphia Philly team at the time, and then to go up against Schilling. So that to me was probably the moment. Was getting that one, and we were still hitting then, so I had to face Schilling a couple of times and completely embarrass myself with a couple of punch outs because I didn't hit even in high school. I didn't hit after my freshman year in high school. I was
really?
a PO. I feel like I was one of the original POs because it started as
I didn't hit either.
Yeah, it's early. That is early back in the 90s, or even I guess late 80s then. So that was fun. But then I'm at the plate. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so I'm just kind of sitting there and I'm taking my back swings or whatever. And Darren Dalton says to me, he thought I was trying to look at the signs, and he goes, "Don't peek back here." And he was an intimidating dude.
Yeah.
Right. So here I am at 180 pounds, skinny, 22-year-old, scared. I'm facing Schilling. I'm on ESPN. And I got Darren Dalton on me about thinking I'm trying to pick up signs. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. Because I'm going to cheat to the fastball against Schilling, or I'm going to sit on his slide. There's no chance, right? None of that is happening. But he's like, don't be peeking back here. Like, and it worked a little bit. Like, that got me, like, the heart started going a little bit quicker. So then later I end up hitting him completely by accident. And I'm like, I'm going to die today. Today's the day. He's going to come out here and kill me because he thinks now I probably hit him because he's telling me not to peek at signs. But I lived to tell the day. I lived to tell the tale.
Did he look at you?
No, I can't remember. So I know I also hit Eisenreich in that game. I hit Eisenreich in a belt with like a fastball. I can't remember if it was a heater that I hit, and I was throwing that hard. I just remember hitting him and thinking, oh, crap. But no, I don't remember. I might have looked away, right? That's kind of the diffuse move there, right? Is that if you feel like a guy's going to be pissed off that maybe you don't make eye contact with him, or if you're just legitimately scared, don't make eye contact with him.
Did you ever get charged? Did anyone ever charge a mound?
Closest I got was Christian Guzman, which didn't scare me that much. And I felt bad about it because I guess he wasn't a home run guy, but I think he must have had a couple of big hits or hit a homer earlier in the game. And we were in Minnesota, and I came in the game and never known for having great command, and first pitch right in between the numbers in his back. Like, it didn't look good at all. And he was pretty ticked off. And then Kenny Lofton, he was always a little dramatic. He got a little close. Benches had cleared when he was in Cleveland earlier. And Laz Diaz was the home plate umpire, was still going today.
Mm-hmm.
And warnings were issued. He let me know. He's like, CJ, warnings, just so you know when you come in the game. And first pitch, I'm trying to throw a fastball down and away, and it was up and in. He backs off and he starts. I get kicked out of the game, and he was he was pretty worked up. But I played with him later, and it's all good. But no, that was the closest. Actually, there was one more, and then Travis Hafner, who looks like Vin Diesel. He scared me a little bit. It was in the minor leagues, and I caught him in the hand, and he was furious. And I got to play with him later. He's a really nice guy. Had a great career, very quiet. But he was, he had an intimidation factor to him.
Wasn't his nickname Shrek?
Yeah, because I don't know if he liked it. I never called him that. But yeah, those are the three. And Hafner and Darren Dahlin, probably the guys that I was most fearful of.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
When you get traded, when you go to different teams, I've always wondered, how do you acclimate yourself? Like, how do you get in there and figure out, how do I fit in?
Yeah, it's a good one, man. I've had more experience than I probably wanted to in that regard, and learned it early. Even if you're getting called up or, to another level, you go AA, AAA, you got 25, 30 new teammates between the guys that are on the IL, new coaching staff. And I moved around a lot. And so I got used to it. So it takes a little time. I'm a guy still to this day. Like if I walk in a room, I'm more assessing a situation. I'm not jumping right in, right? Some guys have these personalities so they can jump right in. I'm more of a sit back, let me get a feel for everything before I start to get comfortable, which is not ideal in our situation in sports, because sometimes like I've had opportunities where I go to a new team, I got to perform right away. And if I don't, then it's not going to last long. And that happened a couple of times where I just felt like I couldn't even get settled. And because I got off to a bad start, you're gone. They just don't have time to wait for you. So that there was definitely some big adjustments. But you walking around, you're saying hello to everybody, trying to get to know guys a little bit. Like I said, I've done it enough times that I guess you get better at it as you go along, and you can adjust a little bit quicker. But there's a lot to it. And the first time I got traded, that first year in 95, I go from Cincinnati, I was in AAA, so I go from Indianapolis to Detroit. It's old Tiger Stadium. And I get in there, and it was also the old Tigers roster. I got traded for David Wells. Everybody loved David Wells in that clubhouse. But this was a really kind of intimidating place. Like you and I both loved Yankee Stadium as kids. The Tiger Stadium to me on television was like my favorite, second favorite ballpark. It just looked so cool. And so now I walk into old Tiger Stadium. Alan Trammell's on that team. Lou Whitaker's on that team. Mike Henneman's on that team. It was Travis Fryman, Cecil Fielder. Still some of the old guard was still on that team. Kirk Gibson was on that team.
Who was your manager?
Sparky Anderson. Yep. Right? So I walked into like a time capsule, essentially, right? Where I just went from the Reds, which was Barry Larkin, Benito Santiago, Deion Sanders, Reggie Sanders, Ron Gaines. It was like this young, hip, cool group, and they were fun to be around, and it made me very comfortable. And then I went to this blue-collar town at this crumbling ballpark with all the older players that were still there. So it was a completely different field. They were hard on rookies. And so I walk in, I meet the clubhouse guy and the clubhouse kid. I'm in the old Tiger Stadium clubhouse. I got my big-ass red, bright red Cincinnati Reds bag. Everything else is dark blue in there. And he goes, "Hey, CJ, good to meet you. We don't have any lockers right now, any extra lockers." I'm like, all right. So I got dressed in the middle of the clubhouse. My new team, first time getting traded with all these legends and guys that had been around. I'm just getting changed there with no locker. Like in the middle of this old ass clubhouse. And I was like, what in the heck? And so eventually there was like kind of a half a locker or whatever, like one that Kirk Gibson and Alan Trammell shared. It was in between them. That's where they have overflow of clothes. The stereo was in there. And so eventually they had to clear that out to put me in it. And so Gibby, who was not rookie friendly, was not happy. So, and he retired like 2 weeks later. This was at the very, very end of his career. He didn't make it to the rest of the season. He retired like middle of August. And so he is screaming and yelling, F this, what the crap, going on and on. I got to empty my locker for this kid who looks young enough to be my son so we can have a spot to put his clothes, like just like uncomfortable really, really quickly. Again, compared to that Reds organization where everyone's trying to make you feel comfortable so you can help them perform. We're trying to win. We're a first place team. Barry Larkin, one of the greatest leaders I'd ever been around. And that was my first one. And then, the rest of the way he was near the top. It was an experience, man. So getting traded there and getting acclimated in that clubhouse in day one and then to day two when I actually got a locker is something I can still see his face, Gibby's face of like how angry he was. It was, I mean, it's Kirk Gibson. It's former Dodger Stadium. It's Vin Scully. Like, again, I'm this kid who loves baseball like everybody else. And now I got that guy who gave me chills every time I watch his highlight yelling at me because I got to take his extra locker.
And oh, by the way, the dude also played football at Michigan State, and he could probably kill you.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
stories are real. Mm-hmm. I would tease him when I'd see him as a broadcaster all the time. I said, I know, because there was a turnover. So, like, I was in that rotation, Jose Lima, Felipe Lira. It was bad. It got young really quick, but there were still some old timers around. It was not a very good product of baseball. And I said, I felt like I kind of drove you into retirement. Like, it was that bad that you were like, if this is what baseball is going to be, I'm out.
What was it like with Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell?
Awesome. I mean, that was a pleasure and an honor to play with both of them. That year was Lou's last year. Tram stayed around for one more. They had broke the record. I don't know if it's been broken since. Most games by teammates. The day they did that, there was a foul ball that rolled into the dugout that I held on to, and I had them both sign it, that I still have.
Oh.
Like I said, I don't even know if it's still a record, but just such professionals. It's so cool. I saw Tram at spring training this year, to be able to run into them, see him once in a while. Lou Whitaker was such a treat. Again, near the end, the dude could absolutely rake. It is an abomination that he's not in the Hall of Fame. You go look at his numbers. Like, you're going to have a second base problem with like Chase Utley and others if Lou Whitaker doesn't get in. So they need to get him in and get that figured out. But he was awesome. And at that point, he would just kind of pinch hit once in a while. He'd hang out in the clubhouse for 4 or 5 innings. He would come down. He was like just a cool guy. And he would come down late in the game to pinch hit in that really tiny dugout. And he's like, I can't keep coming down here and saving y'all. Like, he'd come down and get pinch hit double. Like, he rolled out of bed. Like, he was one of those guys that literally could do nothing and hit, it seemed like. Where Tram was more that hardworking guy that had to grind every day. They couldn't have been more different, but it was such a cool relationship that they had. But man, he was awesome. He's just such a good guy, and glad it's like one of those things again where I'm glad and proud that I got to play with them.
I went to a game one time, Tigers, Yankees, and we're sitting there, and I got there real early for batting practice, and Lou Whitaker was there, and I was like, Mr. Whitaker, can I have your autograph? And he, come on down. And he signed it for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was like, and I have the ball still, right?
Okay.
He signs the ball. And then in that game, I'm sitting near someone and he yells, Lewis, come on. And I'm like, oh my God, it's his dad.
Uh-huh.
It was his dad calling him Lewis.
No way.
I've never heard anyone call Lou Whitaker Lewis.
Well, that's amazing.
So it was just so neat. And this is what, like, the reason for this podcast is for stuff like this. Like, you growing up as such a big baseball fan, and you said you were a Yankee fan until that start. When does the fandom go away?
Yeah, I don't know if the fandom of the game actually ever goes away. For some guys, it does. There are definitely guys that only play the game and don't love the game. They don't love what else is going on around the game. I was always shocked when I'd run across guys that, season's over. They talk about me. I can't wait to get home. I'm not watching baseball. I don't want to talk about baseball. I'm like, I can't wait to watch the postseason. And everyone's built a little bit different. Some guys are in between somewhere. But I think the idea that, especially what we do now, is that you got to be a fan. You got to love it. You got to be curious about it. So I don't know if the fandom necessarily always goes away. As you get a little older and you get comfortable and you become a regular, some of that kind of shine wears off a little bit, to some degree, because now it is your job and you've proven that you belong. But you still love it, and it's still cool to be around, I think, certain type of players. I will say that for me, it was year 10 in my career where then I started bouncing around a little bit more. I had a nice little run for about 3 or 4 years where I could get a lefty out here and there, and that kept me in the game, and I knew where I was going to be. And then I started having some of this up and down. And just when you think like the kid moments are gone, I had one at 31 years old. I get released by the Braves. I go to the minor leagues with the Yankees. I called the Yankees myself to get the job. Even though I had an agent at the time, I just saw like, oh, there's an opportunity there. I'll go to AAA because I'm still getting paid by the Braves. I'll do it. And so I did. And I'm sitting down there pitching really well. It's an off day. And I think I was in Panera Bread, if I'm not mistaken, and eating a sandwich. My phone rings and pick it up. And it is Bucky Dent, who was my manager. And he sounded disappointed because I was pitching well for him. And he was like, hey, man, we got to get you to New York. And so now I'm sitting at Panera Bread in Columbus, Ohio, and I just realized that the lifelong dream at 31 years old came true. I am going to be a New York Yankee. I don't know if it's going to be for a day or what. So again, Bucky Dent, the home run, all of it, right? So that was a kid moment for me. I didn't have too many as you got older. That was an absolute kid moment. We were like, holy crap, it's happening. I remember I was in my rent-a-car. I was like pounding the steering wheel. I was so excited. And I'd experienced a pretty good amount. I've been around a lot of great players at that point. But that was like, I don't say the culmination, but at least what you dreamed about. So yes, even though it became a regular thing and I'm just grinding through now it's work, there was still something really cool about that, because then all the memories kind of come flooding in from being a kid. Now you're like, now I'm actually, I've been there, but now I'm actually going to get to put the uniform on.
So what was it like when you put the uniform on?
It was awesome, man. I tell people all the time, like, and I think it still exists to this day, is that, people look at you differently when you have that uniform on when you're in a stadium. Like having 8 different big league uniforms on and experiencing what it's like to be in a stadium as a big leaguer for a long time, that there was just way more eyeballs, way more attention, way more demands on your time, even as the back then 25th man on the roster. It was a big deal. It was cool, man. It was really cool, especially because it was still the old stadium. At that point, now these guys are your peers, so I'm not like, oh, it's Derek Jeter, oh, it's Alex Rodriguez, who I already played with already in Texas anyway. Like, you look at them as your peers, so it wasn't like that as much as it was like facing Strawberry, whatever that was, 7 years earlier. But it was amazing, man. It was really cool. Locker next to Mike Mussina, who I really respected a lot, had some cool conversations with him over that time, and obviously Joe Torre is my manager, so that was the year where I had both Bobby Cox and Joe Torre as my manager, because I started in Atlanta. I had John Smoltz and Mariano Rivera as my closers that year, right? I mean, it was just really cool to be around some greatness, to be able to pick brains and to experience it. And it was cool to be able to share with my family and all that kind of stuff. Like the first month I was there, I lived at home. So I was back at my childhood home, just commuting in until eventually we got an apartment for the last month in the city. 2 of my kids were born at that point. They were really young. So they got to do it. So it was cool, man. It was really fun to do it in the old ballpark and all the experiences that come along with it. And almost, and to this day, like, I'm not above collecting World Series rings I don't deserve. I have one with the Rangers as a broadcaster, but if they don't blow that 3-0 lead to the Red Sox, they're going to beat the Cardinals, right? As the Cardinals, I think, who the Red Sox beat. I'm going to have an 04 World Series ring. I wasn't on the postseason roster. I certainly didn't deserve it. I didn't pitch well. But I absolutely should have one. How they blew that is unfreaking believable, dude. I should have an 04 New York Yankees World Series ring with my name on it.
Let's not even go down that road, because I don't need to be depressed right now, okay? I was working that for Fox as a stats guy, and I can remember being in the press box at Fenway Park. Game 3, they blew out the Red Sox. Like, blew out, and they're writing all these articles about like how the Red Sox are this and that. And then Game 4, I was standing next to Jay Mariotti, and he had his whole column written out about the Yankees sweeping the Red Sox and moving on, and George Steinbrenner and this and that. And when everything happened, he just pressed delete, and everyone in that press box just presses delete. And one of the guys on our crew, you might know him, Dave Corus. He does stats and whatnot. Dave Corus worked with the Red Sox on Nesson. He says to me, as that Game 4 ends, he goes, "The Red Sox are winning this." And I said,
was he a Red Sox fan or no?
Yes, but well, he worked around the team. He's like, the Red Sox are coming back and winning. I go,
he was
Dave,
their
shut
stats
up.
guy.
Yeah,
Nesson
he did all the graphics for Nesson and all that stuff, and he's like, they're winning. I go, shut up.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm just telling you, I've seen it this whole year. They're going to win this. And that feeling was among the most depressing feelings I've ever had. And I guess it's worse for you because you could have had a World Series ring.
And I was off the postseason roster, understandably so. And then I was working. So I always had the idea of wanting to get into media. So whenever I had chances to do stuff, I would do it. When I was in Detroit, I did some stuff with Bob Valvano for like 3 years, just free stuff, postseason, go on and talk with him. So I reached out to WFAN, said I knew I wasn't going to be in the postseason roster, and said, I've done it before. If you want some help from a guy who just put the uniform on, I'd love to do it. And so most of the time I'd go on with Steve Summers, who I absolutely love, who was a legend. Unfortunately, not on the air anymore, but it was such a treat to go on with him. And so we were literally on air talking as Johnny Damon was hitting that grand slam. And it was so
against
deflating.
Javier Vasquez.
Yeah, it was so deflating to watch all of that go down the way that it did. And remember, again, this is not a ring I deserve. So I thought I put myself in a pretty good position because I got the Braves and I got the Yankees going into the postseason. I'm like, would be great if they met and now I could probably get a full World Series share and guarantee myself a ring. That was what I was banking on. Well, the Braves get bounced in the first round, and the Yankees blow a 3-0 lead. So it just wasn't meant to be. Like I said, I eventually stole one, and the Rangers were kind enough to give broadcasters a ring when they won it. But I had a couple of shots. That Cincinnati team that I came up with was the first place team. They lost in the second round to the Dodgers in '95. And then the year I played in Houston, we won 102 games in '98 and got bounced in the first round. So I jokingly say that I have the most playoff shares for a guy who's never played in the playoffs.
Hey, that's a good one to have.
I've collected 4. There weren't big checks, but it was 4 checks.
Okay, before we move on to the final segment, I have to go back. You faced Michael Jordan in the minors.
Yeah.
And you were teammates with Deion Sanders in Cincinnati. What was Deion like as a teammate?
He was really cool to me. Again, the way that whole organization was run at the time, I was the only rookie, so they weren't giving me a hard time. They didn't make me do some of the rookie stuff. They teased me about maybe making me have to do it, but it never happened. But Deion was cool. I was very quiet. I know it's hard to believe, but I was very quiet when I was there. Didn't ever really say much at all. Just being that rookie that was, seen, not heard, taking it all in. But he seemed to pick up on the fact, and you can appreciate this, is that I liked to eat some of that really cool free food that they had in the clubhouse. And he said I was like always grabbing snacks and stuff. So he would call me snacks, and he would leave like piles of candy in my locker. Like I'd walk by there and be like, whatever, a bunch of candy bars. And come on, snack, go ahead, get you some of this. And he would leave it there. And then I got off to, didn't hit. So I got off to a slow start offensively. I think it was 0 for my first 6. And he came to me and he was like, yeah, you're not good. But I want you to try one of my bats. He's like, try one of my bats, see if you can get a hit with one of my bats. So he gives me his bat. And this game was the Dodgers. I think it was my 3rd start. And Ramon Martinez, Pedro's brother, is pitching. And Brett Boone's on second base. I got Deion Sanders' bat. I believe it was a 2-strike count. This is one of the many reasons I was a bad hitter. I premeditate more often than not if I was going to swing. Like, it wasn't like, let me see where the pitch is and make a decision. I would just kind of guess along with the count and think if I'm going to get a strike, I'm going to swing here. So I made that decision. I'm going to swing. I believe it was a fastball in. Little Squibbler's Old Riverfront, so it's turf.
Yep.
I get jammed. The ball kind of makes its way up the middle for a base hit. Brett Boone scores. I broke the bat. So I had Deion's bat, and I broke it and got my first ever big league hit with Booney, who's now the hitting coach for the Texas Rangers, scoring. And I have that bat hanging in my office.
What did Deion say?
Yeah. He was happy that I got a hit. He was okay. I think he was okay. That one died a hero.
It died a hero.
Yeah, just the way that stuff happens, man, right? Like, it's not going well. It looks like I'm never going to get a hit. I struck out twice against Draybeck, twice against Schilling. It wasn't pretty. And then, of all people, Deion Sanders like, try my bat, and I ended up getting a hit with it and breaking it.
How good was he at baseball?
He was good. I mean, I wasn't there that long. I was only up for about 6 weeks before I got sent down. But to watch, he was an incredible athlete. And it's funny, him and Booney tied together. As good of a second baseman as Brett Boone was, he was not fast. And I remember we were there, and he challenged him to a race where Deion would run backwards and Brett Boone could run forward. And I think it was pretty close. That's how slow Booney was.
Well, I mean, also Deion has the experience of backpedaling in football, so he's used to that.
That's exactly right. But that was cool. I just, again, like first 2 years in baseball, it's faced Michael Jordan and called Deion a teammate.
That's ridiculous. I mean, when you name the teams that you've been on and the players that you call teammates, it's going to lead us into our final segment called This Just In.
All right. Uh-oh.
And this segment, I like to ask questions fairly rapid fire, but I withhold the privilege of following up on the question. Favorite player growing up?
Willie Randolph, who was then and later a coach. So I met Willie. My dad was finished his career in the Navy until I was like, I think through second or third grade. He was running a recruitment center in New Rochelle, New York for Navy recruits. He's bringing me in one day. We're going to have a special guest. I want you to listen to this guy talk. It's Willie Randolph. I'm little. I'm still not like a diehard baseball. I love playing catch with my dad, but I wasn't necessarily, that guy just yet as a kid. I'm there. I'm bored. There's an adult talking. I'm bored out of my mind. I'm like 6, whatever old I am. My dad tells a story that in that moment, I said out loud while he was talking, when are we going home? And he looked at me like that look that you get from a military dad that's like, oh, I don't want to go home and I don't want to get in the car with this guy now because I'm in huge trouble.
Yep.
We later get home. I think it might have been the next day. Yankees are on TV. My dad calls me and he's like, hey, that guy right there is hitting. That's the guy you met yesterday. And I was hooked. At that point, I was like, that guy on television is my friend. I met him yesterday, and now I want to be a Yankee. And so there was nothing about our skill sets that were similar, but he was my guy until then. Eventually, Dave Righetti, Ron Guidry, the left-handed pitchers, Don Mattingly, the left-handed hitter. But it started out with Willow, who eventually I had as a coach, which was really neat.
That is really neat. Number 30, Willie Randolph.
Yeah.
Favorite team or experience, like the team experience you played for?
Man, there's a lot of good ones. It's hard to pick one. I think the Braves one and playing for Bobby was pretty awesome, playing for Bobby Cox. And now that I work here, it works out even better. But that was just one of the more professional experiences I ever had. Certainly with the Yankees that same year was that lifelong dream that you kind of get to live out and put the uniform on. And then probably, the 2 years in Japan, I played for Sadahara. I played for 40 managers around the world. And Sadahara, it's hard to put him into a category of what he means to that country. Probably now Shohei Ohtani, I guess, like where everybody loves him. Right? Like, I don't know if you can say everybody in the United States loves Aaron Judge, right? We all love him. He's awesome.
Right,
But the fan base is like, nope, no thanks, not interested. Sadahara is just 868 home runs, had a different kind of aura to him. And so he wasn't a great manager, but at the same time, it just was really cool to be able to say, I have a letter. So after my second year, I was kind of pleading to come back for a third. And so I sent a letter and had my translator translate it to give to him. And then he wrote one back in Japanese and signed it. And then I have the translation from my translator that I put in a frame. So that was a kind of a cool thing to be able to call him my manager.
Do you know how many teammates you've had who are now Hall of Famers?
I used to. I even have it written down somewhere because I've gone through it before. Do you have it in front of you or no?
I'm just thinking if you go, no, I don't have, but I'm just sitting here going, okay, you're with the Braves.
Yeah.
So you've got Smoltz, Maddox, Glavine, Chipper, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I want to say it's about 14. Not Maddox.
And
Maddox
then,
was not on that team.
Oh, he was, okay. He wasn't
No,
there then.
but
Okay.
I might have it in my drafts.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, and then I'm thinking about, with the Astros, you got Biggio and Bagwell, and you probably at that time have Billy Wagner.
Yep. So yeah, Wags now. So Wags makes it 14. 4 managers: Sparky Anderson, Joe Torre, Bobby Cox, Frank Robinson, and then 14 teammates: Larkin, Smoltz, Randy Johnson, Biggio, Piazza, Pudge, Bagwell, Trammell, Chipper, Mariano, Lucina, Jeter, and Wagner. Oh no, and Sherholt. So one executive too. So it's actually 13 teammates, and hopefully Lou Whitaker will make 14. So I don't think there's anybody left that'll have a chance.
That's impressive.
Yeah, 13 with 4 managers and 1 executive. Yeah,
all right.
That's one of the cool things, right? And some guys were real brief, and some guys were at the very end, or whatever it may be. So it was cool. It's really cool to see Wags get in.
Who is the best leader you were around?
Yeah, so I alluded to a little bit earlier. I think probably Barry Larkin, Derek Jeter are the easy ones in the prime positions that they were in. Those are the 2 that probably stick out the most. I hadn't really put a lot of thought into that before. But it was upwards of 1,000 total teammates that I played with, if you count the guys in Asia too. I actually have this really cool picture that I made it myself on Photoshop, where it's just a picture of me pitching in Japan, where it's got kind of a cool background of all the fans. They have this balloon ceremony. It's really neat. And then in really tiny, like one of those pictures where you can't tell what's going on unless you zoom in, I have every teammate listed on it. So outside of like one or 2 of my Korean teams. So I think there's like 850 or 860 or something like that on there, including the managers. You would never know looking at it until you like get in closer, then you see like everybody's name. So, but that, off the top of my head, I'd have to say, and just because it made such an impression on me to first walk in my first big league clubhouse and watch how Barry Larkin led. I pitched a game in relief. I pitched 2 games in relief. I pitched one where I had to face one lefty. I came ground ball. I think it was the first or second. I had to cover the bag, and I dropped the ball at the back and ended up tying the game at the time. We came back and won, but I was down because I screwed up. So I come in kind of head down, and we always played this Snoop Dogg CD after every win. It started with the second track. I can't remember which one it was. It had to, anyway, but Lark made me start it that day. He's like, hey, let's go get our music on track 2, like after we won.
Yeah.
Because he knew that I was kind of down on the fact that I almost blew the game for us. First road trip, we get to Houston. It's my first big league road trip. Eyes wide open, the whole thing, the way all the travel and everything else works. We're in the elevator, going up to rooms. Guys are talking about where they're going to go that night, where they're going out, yada, yada. And Lark says, I know one of you guys is going to call CJ and see what he wants to do tonight. Like, I don't think that happens today.
Wow.
Right? And sure enough, I get back to my room and Jose Rio calls me. What are you doing tonight? Let's go. Yeah. That was Lark leading that to make sure that I was comfortable. And again, I was only there 6 weeks, and he made a huge impact on the way that he handled and led a team.
That is awesome. Wow. Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
I wish Derek Jeter asked me to go out a couple times.
Your wife wishes he did, too.
She's okay with it, too.
All right, so you're wearing an H&H Bagels shirt right now, which, I love my food.
Yeah.
Okay?
Are you a Seinfeld guy?
Are you kidding?
Okay, I want to make sure you knew H&H. Okay, from the Festivus. Okay, I just want to make sure. I figured you
First
knew.
of all, it's H&H is actually a H&H Bagels in New York City. I used to live across the street from one.
This is their old logo from the show. They have since changed their logo. Why they would ever do that, I don't know, but they have.
Am I a Seinfeld fan?
I thought so. I just want to double check. All
right. The name of my fantasy football team is the Moops the Moors. Okay.
Right, perfect. Yeah.
So, best city for food anywhere you played in the world.
Yeah. So obviously it's probably not fair to bring Japan in because it's such a unique cuisine that you're not going to be able to match anywhere. And you're going to do some pretty amazing things while you're there. New York has always been a good food city. That hasn't changed at all. But growing up in that area and going to college there, like you want some unique things. It comes down to nowadays where it's a couple of spots you really want to hit on the road. Right. And sometimes they're really simple ones like Tony's in San Francisco. I was introduced to that pizza place, Tony's Napolitano, only a couple of years ago by Eric Deli, who was directing games for the Rangers, now directs them for the Marlins. I go there every single time now. If there's one thing I'm always going to do is every time we're in San Francisco, I'm going to Tony's. They have like 700 different pizzas on their menu, every kind you could think of. It's amazing. It's just a fun group atmosphere. So that's a go-to. But in Japan, when you sit there and do like Japanese barbecue yakiniku, where you're sitting around, you're cooking it in front of you, like that's an experience that is amazing. I'll try to find places like that. I went to one in Philly last time just because it's a really neat treat. We went to an amazing steak place in San Diego to kick the season off. Good food is everywhere, right? If you just put a little bit of an effort in to find it. You want barbecue, you want to be in Kansas City, right? Or you want to be in Texas, quite honestly. So, but the one I look forward to the most that's a good question, man. New York's a can't miss. Like if I'm gonna have my wife with me, if Megan's gonna be with me, and we want to find something. She hasn't been to Chicago in a long time, but you can't go wrong there either. That's hard, man. These are all big league cities. There's no shortage.
I know. I honestly thought it would be Japan or Korea.
Yeah, so I didn't love Korean food. I always say that carefully because I feel like I'm going to make people upset. But it's everything's spicy, and I'm not a big spice guy.
Spice.
Yeah, so you would love it. Everything is spicy, but the Japanese food I grew to love it. It's just so unique. They put so much care into it. Yes. One of the things I was most fascinated by, like going to the grocery store, and there would be apples like individually wrapped in foam. Like they treat their food with so much respect. There'd be watermelons just by itself, like presented like it was, a gold trophy or something. I had one of my cousins married a Japanese girl, and she told me one of the things that she could not stand about being in the United States. Like she loved our washing machines here compared to Japan, like the weird stuff when you're running a house. But she said she would want to pull her hair out when she would check out of the grocery store and just watching the way they would handle her food. Like the guy would just take like the bag of apples and just like throw it down the conveyor belt. And she'd be like, "Oh my God." Like it would just freak them out because they respect food so much. At least that was my experience. So yeah, listen, where I was in Fukuoka, which is where I played, they're known for having the best ramen in the world. That's kind of their claim, and I think they can do it justifiably. It's pretty amazing.
That's awesome. Well, CJ, dude, it's been awesome to catch up and hear some of these stories. It is pretty funny. I mean, I think back to that first game that we called together in St. Louis, and I don't know if you remember or not, but the night before the game, Tim McCarver was in the hotel bar.
Yeah, it was after the game.
No, it was before. It was the night before the game.
Okay.
And he went to have dinner with Bob Gibson.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and Gowan asked us if we wanted to go meet him, and I was too scared to do it. He's like, "You want to come over and say hi to Bob Gibson?" I was like, "No, I don't want to bother Bob Gibson at dinner. Do I want to meet him? Of course I want to meet him." but I am not walking over to his table while he's eating dinner with Tim McCarver. I'm like, hi, I'm CJ. And tomorrow's my first big league game. They don't care. They don't care. And I'm not doing it now. I regret it now. And sadly, he's passed. But, God, he was one of the best. So, yeah, I do remember that. I saw the picture somewhere with me and McCarver.
Yep.
From that. But
yeah,
that's fine. I'm glad you said that. I would have told that story wrong. I always thought it was after the game. Because I remember Gowan saying after the game, and maybe it was we were having a drink somewhere else. You know, he's such a ball buster, right? I'm like, all right, I think it went pretty well first game. I'm thinking to myself, and he walks over and he's like, well, you tried your best. You tried the best you could do. I was like, gosh, did I suck today? Was it that bad? But he was good.
Am I getting cut?
Yeah. It's good. Like Megan, maybe you are going to cry.
Yeah. Well, please do me a favor. Tell Megan I say hello. Tell the kids I say hello, and I wish them the best. And dude, keep up the great work. I love the fact that you got your ring with the Texas Rangers. You know, the Atlanta Braves. You got a great broadcast partner and a great organization to work with there. So I love seeing what you're doing. Keep it up and keep in touch.
Justin, I appreciate it, man. This is fun. And congratulations on the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
All right, brother.